All right, everyone. Welcome to the Elokus podcast. And this is class number 27 in the discourse. Class number 27 in the discourse Naso Rosh, which is the fourth discourse in the discourse in the great book 5672. Again, this is class number 27 in the fourth discourse, Naso Rosh, and we're beginning today chapter number 17 in the overall book. Okay, and this is going to be the last chapter in this discourse, in which he's going to conclude this idea that he was discussing, that he was revealing, that he was bringing forth. The main point in this chapter was to explain how the lights of Atzilus, the Oiros, are also not completely free from any type of tzir. They also have some bit of a image, some bit of a slant, and even if you trace them all the way back into the Or Ein Sof, which means you follow the Or into the Kav, the lights are followed into the thread of Or Ein Sof that was emanated after the Tzimtzum, after the contraction. And then you trace it back how this Kav is being emanated from its source, from the Or Ein Sof that's before the Tzimtzum. Even over there, the Shoresh of the Kav is from the hidden 10 Sfiros Hagnuzos, which is the latter element of the Or Ein Sof, or the nether element of the Or Ein Sof, as we discussed, the lower Yud Kei Vav Kei in the Or Ein Sof, as discussed in the last class, chapter 6, in chapter 16 in the class, is how there's in the Or Ein Sof two levels: the Or Ein Sof that's beyond all Sfirot, and the lower element of the Or Ein Sof where there is already a will, where it is arose in Hashem's infinite light, a desire for creation. So although this is taking place deep inside the Ein Sof, but once there is a will for creation, it already narrows the light, that there is already the beginnings of the beginnings of the beginnings of the beginnings of the beginnings in a most abstract, impossible to comprehend abstract way. There is already the 10 hidden Spheros. And that's the Shirish of the Or, and that's the Shirish of the Or Pnimi, of the internal light, and the likes. Now we begin chapter 17. The F Shalom, and based on this we can say, when the Rebbe says we could say, it's possible to say we know that this is the way it is. The F Shalom, it's possible that we can say, Shazau Pirish Naisa Adam B'Tzalmeinu Kidmesenu. This is the meaning of when it says in Genesis, in the first, all the way in the beginning of Genesis, I think it's in chapter 1, when God says, or maybe it's in chapter 2 in Genesis, Hashem says, Nasa Adam, let us create man, B'Tzalmeinu in our form, Kidmuseinu in our image. So simply, when it says, let us create man in our form and our image, is God is creating the man that is being created is the human being. Okay? That God is creating the human. That means the physical human being down here on earth. And when we say in the image of God, it's referring to, according to the mystics, Kabbalah, and so on and so forth, it's referring to the image of the Sphirot. Of course, God himself doesn't have any image, but Hashem does emanate and manifest and reveal himself as a supernal man, which is where in the world of Atzilus, Hashem is called a man. So, because he has the 10 features that make up the human psyche. And the reason, rather the opposite, the human psyche is created in the image of the divine psyche. But God emanates of himself these personality traits, these sphirot, these attributes. Where in the world of Atzilus, especially when the lights come down into the Kalim, then they become really already, as we discussed earlier already, the features become very, very, very strong features. Although even in Atzilus, even the vessels are still infinite, as we discussed that earlier. But yet there is already, the concepts exist of intelligence, emotions, and the like. So when God is saying, let us create man in our image and in our form and in our image, it's referring to the human being below is created in the image of the supernal human, which are the sphirot, the sum construct of the divine sphirot of the world of emanation, of the world of Atzilus. However, now he's going to give a much higher explanation of what it means, let us create man. First of all, who is the man that is being created? So according on the much higher level, the man that's being created is not the physical human being down here below. Rather, the Sfirot of Atzilus themselves, they are called man. So when God says, let's make man, who is speaking? Not the divine being of Atzilus is speaking and saying, let's create an earthy human that looks like us and is in the form and the image of us. But rather, the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light, before the Tzimtzum is speaking, and what he is saying, let us create man, referring to the attributes. In Atzilus, the supernal man, the Adam Elyon, the supernal man, that's the man that is being created. And that man of Atzilus, which is the Spheros, is being made in the form and in the image of who? Of the Or Ein Sof, of the infinite light, before the Tzimtzum. Now, didn't we learn that the infinite light before the Tzimtzum doesn't have any form and he doesn't have any image, it's purely infinite. But based on what we learned now in the last many classes, we found out that both the vessels and even the lights of Atzilus have a source of Atzilus, of the world of emanation. They have, of all the Sfirot, they have a source in the Or Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum. The vessels come from the Rishimu, which is the power of limitation that's in the Or Ein Sof. And the lights also come from a somewhat, albeit much less, but somewhat already a force of limitation that's in the Or Ein Sof, and that is the 10 hidden spheros that's in the Or Ein Sof. So the 10 hidden spheros that are in the Or Ein Sof is the source of the lights, and that will later be the lights of Atzilus, the lights of the spheros, and the Rishimu, the trace, as we said, the power of limitation that even after the Tzimtzum remains leftover traces. That element of Rishimu is the source of the vessels. It's the power of Gevul, the source of the vessels. So he says that's what it means in our form and in our image. Form is higher than image. Okay? So form is like you're making a sculpture of something. It's literally the same shape. Image is like a picture of something. It's much less. Picture is much less than a form of something. So the form is referring to the Or. The lights, the soul of the man of Atzilus, which is the Or HaChesed, the light of kindness, for instance, the light of Gevura, or the Or that's in Chachma, that's in wisdom, or the Or, the light, the energy that's in Bina, the soul of it, the lights, the energy, not the vessels, which is the soul of the supernal man of Atzilus, that is Bitzalmenu, is in the form of who? Of the 10 hidden spheros that are in the Or Ein Sof. So Bitzalmenu, it's in the form of that. Albeit they're light years and light years away, but still, there's still a somewhat of a resemblance, because there is 10 spheros, and there's also 10. The 10 oros. 10 oros are much lower, especially when they go into the vessels, they become much lower. But even when they're lights, they're already lower. But still, ultimately, we trace them back. They go back to the 10 hidden spheros in the Or Ein Sof. That's called Salmenu. Kidmusenu, in our image, is referring to the vessels of the Kalim of Atzilus, in a sense, the divine body, not the divine soul. Now that is in the image of who? Of the Rishimu, because it is, the Rishimu is considered, remember we learned earlier, the Rishimu was considered a power that is considered like a little bit separated Or Ein Sof. Of course it's not separated. All that exists over there is Or Ein Sof. But compared to the Esses Spheros Agnuzos, compared to the 10 hidden spheros, this is considered like a Koyach Nivda, like a separate power, like we discussed earlier. That's why it's not the name Hayut Kei Vav Kei, which is the name that's unified with God. Rather, it's the other names, which are names that have more of a distinct existence, like Hashem having a name based on his profession, rather a name that is just connected to who he is as he is. So it's more of a Koyach Nivdal, and that's why it's called only his image. That's what he's saying over here. And that who is it referring to? Not only is it referring to the human being down here, that's also true, but it's referring on a much higher level. When Hashem says, let's create man, he's referring to the coming into being of the supernal man of the world of emanation of Atzilus. The Essa sphere is the Atzilus, because the 10 spheres of Atzilus, hem b'chinas tzir adam, it is in the image of a man. Golgotha, as we know that the 10 spheres have a skull, which is generally referred to as the Keter element, the Keser, the crown. Moicha, it has a brain, which are the Chabad, the Chachma Bina Das. So, and then you go down the right hand, the left hand, as the Zohar depicts in Pasach Elio, in that piece where it talks about all the spheres, it speaks of an image of a man. So now he says, but then, hold it. That image of God, so to speak, as a human, and if that's the man that God is referring to, and it is made in the image of someone higher, of who is it higher? We would think that higher than that there is no man, so how God is not called man? And if God is not called man, how can it be that the man of God is called in the image or in the form of who? Above that there is no form. And the answer is, in the hidden, most abstract, most hidden potential of potential, none. There is also the 10 hidden spheres, and so the man of Atzilus is considered Bitzalmeinu, in the image of the Or Ein Sof. Hine Bitzalmeinu, when it says Tzalmeinu, Hainu Mebchinas Esa Spheres Agnuzos. It is in the Tzelem, it is in the form of the 10 hidden spheres B'Matzilon that are hidden in their emanator. Shemehem Nimshachu, which they're responsible, from them is drawn forth ha'oiros to esa spheres, the lights of the 10 spheres, shehem b'chinas neshama shel adam d'Atzilus, which they are the soul of the man of Atzilus. Kamaimer, as it says, vahu neviyu iyu kenishmasa, and like it says in the passage that we mentioned earlier, Pasach Eliyahu, it's a passage from Elijah the prophet, and over there it says that he says that the soul, the lights of the spheres, they're like considered a neshama to the spheres, which is like the body. So in Atzilus itself, there is a body and a soul. The kalim, the vessels, they are the body. And the oiros, they're the lights. They're the soul. So that would be Betzalmeinu, in our form. And then Kidmuseinu, like our image, that is referring not to the soul of Atzilus, that's referring to the body of Atzilus. And by the body as well, we say that it too is in the image, not in the form, but in the image of Hashem, of what, of the Or Ein Sof. What element? Of the Rishimu. Because the Rishimu, there is already a source for vessels. Kedmeseinu is Bechinas HaRishimu, the Rishimu, Shememenu Sharish HaKelim, which from it comes forth the source of the vessels, the Atzilus of Atzilus, Shem Bechinas Gufa, which are like the body. So it would be something like saying like this. The first interpretation that we gave for this verse, the more simple interpretation, that God is referring to the physical human being down here in this world. So when it says in the verse, let us create man in our form and our image, we can then differentiate and say, why the form and the image? So we would say like this, the soul, is it referring to the soul or is it referring to the human body? So we would more be inclined to say, if anything, it's referring to the human spirit. The human soul is in the image of God. And that, that's true. But really it refers to the body as well. And that's why it says, let us create man in our soul, in our image. The soul is in the form of God. The body is in the image. So the soul is a reflection of the lights of Atzilus. And the body is in the form somewhat relates to the kalim of Atzilus, the body of Atzilus. Our physical soul and our physical body and our spiritual soul that make up the human being down here in this world is a reflection. On our soul level, we are in the form of the lights of Atzilus. And in our body, we are in the image of the body of the spherois of Atzilus. Now, how about the man of Atzilus himself? Also has a soul and a body, right? So what he said over here is that the soul and the body of Atzilus is in the form and in the image of God, of the Or Ein Sof. Which element of the Or Ein Sof? The soul is in the form of the Esa Spheres Agnuzos, of the 10 hidden spheres. And the Kalim, the vessels of Atzilus, they are in the image of the Rishimu, which the Rishimu is more external, so to speak. Ochein, however, all of this is only from when there is in the Or Ein Sof, from the lower Havaya. From once Hashem has already a desire within the Or Ein Sof to create worlds, he immediately images himself and forms himself in some very, 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 very unnoticeable and undetectable form, but it already forms in him that image. But the Or Ein Sof himself, prior to that will, higher than that will, like we discussed earlier, the Or Ein Sof, the deeper part of the Or Ein Sof, on that level we can't speak of man at all, as it says ki lo yadamu, that he's not man. Regarding God, it says like he's not man. So usually we say that above Atzilus, God is not man. From Atzilus and onward, Hashem presents himself like a man. Above Atzilus, in Keser, and especially the Pnimius, the innermost of Keser, over there is the Or Ein Sof, over there is no man. That's true. But now we're speaking on a much higher level, on a much deeper level, much, much, much further up in the evolution of worlds, all the way, 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 way up, before the Tzimtzum. Or even before the Tzimtzum, there is the man and there is the non-element of man. The man element of the Or Ein Sof is the Esa Spherois, the hidden Esa Spherois, and the Rishimu would be then the body and the soul. And above that, Hashem is Kiloi Adamu, the Or Ein Sof itself, as it is for itself, is Loi Adamu, is not a man. Okay. Now he continues and he says, now, in the beer, in a discourse from the Alter Rebbe, in a special book, it's not found in his book, L'Kutei Torah Or, it's in a book, Maamor Admar Azaken. The discourse is Hanochas Harap, which means, Hanochas Harap means Reb Pinchas. The Alter Rebbe had a student, Reb Pinchas of Shklov, and he was one of the greatest students of the Alter Rebbe, and he was a scribe of the Alter Rebbe, writing down the Alter Rebbe's Torah. When the first founder of Chabad, Rosh Zalman of Liadi, would say Torah, this was one of his Hasidim who would write. It even says that the Alter Rebbe, in the middle of his Torah, would go into such a level of dveikus, such a level of complete rapture, that he would roll on the floor while he was speaking, because he would experience all these lights that he was talking about. He would literally be experiencing them. And they would throw him literally on a spin. And he would go rolling on the floor, crying out in eslavos, in excitement and fervor and uncontainable energy. And this chassid would roll together with the Alter Rebbe on the floor to hear his words, because you couldn't hear. He would bend over, he would be writing. And most of the time he caught, sometimes he didn't catch what he said. So there's one particular volume of the Alter Rebbe's books in which are the recorded writings from this chassid Reb Pinchas. Over there is a discourse on Shir Hashirim called, on Song of Songs, on the verse that says, Shisham Hema Malchus, 60 are the queens. And then there is that's the discourse, and then the Alter Rebbe said a second discourse, which was expounding on the first discourse. It's called an explanation on the first discourse. So, over here, the author, who is the Alter Rebbe's great-great-great-grandson, brings Uba'abir de Shishamim Malchus, and in the explanation of Shishamim Malchus, Ksav Yad Harap, the Ksav Yad, the writings of Reb Pinchas Zal, it says as follows: Kosov, v'chol sfira lo shayach likroi ba'atzmusay mahusa. There he makes a strong statement that you cannot speak of spheres. Attributes are not applicable at all to God's very substance and essence. The essence, the Godhead, so to speak, the essence of God himself cannot be, you can't attribute any sphera. There's no such a thing as spheros attributes. But where can we speak of spheros? Rak b'pchinas oir ein sof. Only in the infinite light, over there we can talk about spheros. Sham shayach likroi b'shem sphera. There we can speak of spheros, we can speak already of attributes. Aval, however, he says, in the light, avaloi b'pchinas eses spheros, but not 10 spheros. Kigam b'pchinas oir ein sof ein mispar. Because since this is an oir, this is a light, this is a revelation of the essence. That's the meaning or Ein Sof. It's the or, it's the light of the Ein Sof, of God himself. Since it's a light of, okay, that's one explanation. Sometimes it's or Ein Sof, the light is infinite. But the point of the light is it's an expression, it's a revelation of the essence. So just like the essence, you can't limit him to a sphera, to an attribute, to any attributes. In the light, you can't either pick a number of attributes. It's infinite. However, you could mention attributes. However, the attributes over here are without number. Or ein sof, ein mispar, there's no number. But in the very substance of Hashem, over there is no spheres at all, attributes at all. This is quoting what he says over there. So why is the author, the Rebbe Rashab, quoting this piece from Rebbe Pinchas? What he's bringing forth from here is that it seems like that in the light, the Or Ein Sof, where we were saying there are 10 hidden spheres, but Rebbe Pinchas says that in the Or Ein Sof, there are spheres, but they're infinite spheres. And we've been arguing that in the Or Ein Sof, what did we say earlier? We said earlier, on the lower level of the Or Ein Sof, we were saying there's 10 spheres. Once Hashem had a will already to create, so then there is in that will already emerges the potential for 10 spheres, for 10 attributes. But in the Or Ein Sof beyond, we were saying there's no spheres. Not just in the essence there aren't any spheres. Even in the Or there's no spheres. But Reb Pinchas brings from the Alter Rebbe, because the Alter Rebbe said there are spheres. But there are spheres in Kates that are limitless. Remember, we mentioned this a couple of classes ago. And I said, well, let's wait with it. Let's introduce it over here. So this is where we're introducing this. What we're basically saying is that in the Or Ein Sof, higher than the lower Havaya, higher in the higher Havaya, in the higher Yud Kei Vav Kei, where the Or is still simple, prior to God having a desire for worlds, there are spheres, but they're infinite, they're endless. So are there spheres or there are not spheres in the Or Ein Sof higher than the 10 hidden spheres? So that's what he's going to explain over here. And he's going to say, Nishma Lafizah, it seems to imply, the Gamba Or Ein Sof abilti mugbal. Even in the Or Ein Sof, that's not limited. And therefore we called it just now, we said it's above being called man. It's above even the beginning of 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 the trace of man. On him we say, Kiloi Adamu, he's not man. There is a verse in Samuel, in Shmuel, where Shmuel says to King Saul, God is not a man that he should regret. But the Kabbalists take this idea to that Hashem is above even the most spiritual, the most sublime level of man, even the divine man, that's not God himself. He's above it. But even on that level, where there's no 10 spheres, it seems to imply there are spheres. The Gamba Or Ein Sof abilti mugbal, even in the Or Ein Sof that's limitless, Shalamayla mahakav, that's above the kav, and even the source of the kav. Remember, the kav is plugged in to the lower part of the Or Ein Sof. Shayach sphere, but even above that place, it's possible there is spheres, there are attributes. Only rak b'mohus atzmus hamoor, only in the very substance of the luminary, not the illumination, the luminary, which is the substance of the source of the light. Lo shayach sham spheres klal. Over there are no spheres. So, it seems to be saying that in the light, there are spheres. So that's what he's going to explain now. Vahainu, and that is, lihiyoy, since the idea of light is that light means revelation, expression, and revelation. V'chol giloy, and every revelation, hu al yedei spheres. revelation automatically means somewhat of a sphera. There can't be revelation without a sphera. There has to be some content to any expression in revelation. When something is coming into a revealed state, there must be some form, even though we're soon going to see that it's over here it's a sphera, but the sphera is simple with utter simplicity. But it has to be expressed in something. Let's remove any type of definition and limitation, but you can't. There has to be a sphera. Every revelation is through spheres, is through an attribute. That's why there will be spheres, even in the light of in the etzem, in the essence, since it's not it's not expressed. Essence is essence. Over there, not only don't we have to have spheres, there cannot be spheres. The essence is simple with utter simplicity, and there is no sphera, there is no, well, soon we'll have to discuss what means sphera, but there is no identity to say this or that in any way whatsoever. But in the light, even the light that he shines for himself, remember we differentiated the light that he's emanating for himself or the light that he's emanating with the target of the world. So once there is a light targeting a creation that we said is already, then the light conditions itself already to 10 spheres. But even the prior light, just the revelation of him to be revealed as light already must come with sphera. It already has an attribute. However, nevertheless, mispar esa spherois agnuzais, the number of 10 spherois, yashloimar, that we can say the loy shayach, it's not, that does not apply, it's not applicable. Rak b'shayresh hakav, only in the lower part of the Orein Sof, which is the root of the thread. Sham shayach loimer esa spherois agnuzais. That's when we can speak of 10 hidden spherois. Shazau b'chenas memala kalalman, because that's the source of the indwelling light. Remember, it says in the Zohar that God is he fills all worlds and he encompasses all worlds. Memala kalalman, he fills all worlds. Now, how does God fill all worlds? By first filling the 10 building blocks of creation, and that all the worlds are made out of. And what are those 10 building blocks? Those are the 10 sphirot of Atzilus. And God fills them. That's called the Mamala Kalam, the indwelling light. Now, since those lights are going to be 10 different lights, as we said, the lights are not absolutely the same in all the spheres. Like we had all the earlier discussions, how sometimes the one light, one sphere exchanges with another, the sphere chlifu dechtayu, they switch energies, is a sign that the energies have somewhat of a definition. That was the whole theme of this whole discourse, that the lights are also slightly slanted. Since the lights are slanted, so since the Essa sphere, since the shirish of the kav, the root of the kav, which is the root of mamala kalaman, then in the most subtle way, there are already 10 hidden spheres in this level. Mamala kalaman, the mamala kalaman, even is even when it is in its root and in its source, in the Orein Sof, in the infinite light, it still has somewhat hidden 10 spheres. Since this light that fills all worlds, hu b'pchinas esa spheres, since the light that's mamala kalaman, when it comes down into the world, it's in a state of 10 spheres. Al kain, therefore, gam b'sharshay, even in its root, shayach loimer esa spheres agnuzais, we can enumerate and count 10 spheres in this level of the Orein Sof Chulu. Masha ein kain ba'Orein Sof abligvol, which is in the case if we go higher, in the Orein Sof that is limitless, which is not the source of the Mamala Kalam, which is not the source of the Kav. Which is the source of not the indwelling light, but the source that will later be the encompassing lights of God, that are bigger than the world, that are not fitting to the world. And that's not 10 spheros. So, lo yesh mispar l'spheros. Over there's no number to spheros, and over there, the spheros are limitless. There's no limit to the spheres at all. V'hainu, and he says something very powerful. two ways that they are limitless. Number one, Shem bebchinas spherois adin kates. Number one, they are infinite possibilities of spherois. The spherois over there are absolutely infinite. And also, Vaspherois Gufa. Every single one of these spherois, of these infinite potentials, are Hem Bepchinas Pshitas Lagamri, are utterly simple and they don't have definitions that define them. So now, obviously, this is very puzzling. How can you have billion different spheroids but nothing defining them? What makes them different one from the other? Like we had the question earlier. How can there be 10 spheroids, we said, if they have no tzir? In order for them to be 10, one has to be different than the other. But here we're saying they're infinite, but these are utterly simple. How is that possible? Okay, we'll see in a minute. This is the real meaning of without a limit. Number one, there's no number, so that would be like quantitatively without a number. And then qualitatively as well. And the spheres themselves are without limit, which means that they're beyond any design. They're in a simple state. Look later what he says in chapter 80. Over there he's going to discuss this whole concept and how is it possible that they're spheroids but they're the same. But for now, that's the idea. Above the hidden 10 spheroids is a level where there is still spheroids in kates without an end spheroids, and the spheroids are not defined in any way. And we'll, Be'ezus Hashem, continue this idea in tomorrow's class. And meanwhile, may we have Mashiach today.